On today's show, we talk about who is to blame for this continued delay of Jason Robertson's contract. We'll also talk about Wyatt, Johnston, and Logan Stankoven and their performance in the Traverse City Prospect Tournament. And then we'll close out the show talking about an old friend, Rick Bowness, and some of the recent stories that have come out of Winnipeg and why it should make us more grateful as Stars fans. All coming up on a Monday episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Dallas Stars media, coming to you on this Monday, September 19th. Training camp starts this week for the Dallas Stars. Ladies and gentlemen, get excited. Hockey season is officially here. The NHL is finally back with teams reporting to camp and a Dallas Stars preseason game happening a week from today at the American Airlines Center against the St. Louis Blues. And we'll talk more about the preseason games later in today's episode. But do want to take a moment and thank you for stopping by today's episode of Locked On Stars, whether this is your first time here, you're just not finding us, or you've been listening since day one. Want to say thank you for stopping in. Want to encourage you, if you're watching on YouTube, to hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. You can also find us and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform as well as social media. We are on Twitter at Dane_Lewis, at Locked On Stars. Then you can also find us on Instagram now as well. Just search at Locked On Stars to get some more short-formed content. We'll be clipping out pieces of episodes every day, posting those to Instagram so you can share those with your family, with your friends. You know, if you're having a debate about a Dallas Stars player or just a Dallas Stars take, and you say, look, the Locked On Stars guy, he agrees with me, or this is where, you know, I got my take from listening to this podcast. So thank you guys for the continued support on YouTube, on social media, all of that good stuff. But let's jump into today's episode. Of course, the main thing I want to talk about is Jason Robertson. At the time of recording this on Friday afternoon, around 12:30 Central Time, he is still unsigned with the team. And if you've been listening to our division previews, we've now done 6 of them. The 7th one should be coming out tomorrow, where we preview the St. Louis Blues with Josh Hyman of Locked On Blues. But I digress on that. We'll get to that tomorrow. But if you've been listening to our division previews, you've heard me say quite a few times, talking with these other hosts of other Central Division teams, there's several reasons why Jason Robertson is still unsigned. But I think the biggest part of it, and this has been a more recent development, and I've heard some other people make this claim as well, and I certainly agree. It's not necessarily his fault or really all the Stars' fault, Stars' ownership fault at that. It's all of these other young NHL forwards, and there's 3 in particular that I think their deals and, you know, what they've done financially with their teams have really put the Stars in a weird situation and made Jason Robertson and his camp more confident in himself and what he's worth and what he's owed for the next several seasons of his NHL career. You look at Tim Stützle, a young, talented forward for the Ottawa Senators, only 20 years old, but recently, within the past week or so, signed an 8-year deal worth $8.35 million AAV, making him the highest paid Ottawa Senator starting next season. That deal will kick in 2023-2024 and then carry on for 8 years after that. I mean, absolutely insane money for a guy that is good, is talented. I think that he's going to be a fine player for them, probably be a cornerstone piece of what they're trying to build there in Ottawa. Only 132 games played in the league so far, though. 34 goals, 53 assists, and 87 career points in total through about 2 seasons for Tim Stützle so far. Jason Robertson, at age 23, had 79 points last season alone, and has also played 4 less games than Tim Stützle at 128, and put up basically Stützle's career stat line in a season. Now, again, Robertson is 3 years older and maybe been a little bit more of a focal point for this team over the past couple of seasons, whereas Stützle's maybe playing second fiddle to guys like Brady Tkachuk and other forwards on that lineup. And so, you know, you can't just make a solid comparison saying they're the exact same player, but Jason Robertson, in my opinion, better than Tim Stützle, but Tim Stützle is going to be making a ton of money over the next 8 seasons. And staying in that Atlantic division, you have Tage Thompson of the Buffalo Sabres, 24 years old, just recently signed a 7-year deal worth $7.1 million AAV, also starting in the 23-24 season. Tage Thompson, also an incredibly gifted scorer, 38 goals, 30 assists, 68 points in 78 games played with the Sabres in 2021-2022. Great stats, a fantastic season, by far his best season in the NHL through his young career, but this was really his first time having a season like this. I mean, he'd played a small handful of seasons before, but just really hadn't shown a ton of flashes, so it's a pretty bold move from the Buffalo Sabres to give him this big of a deal, paying him this much money after just one season of, again, good production. 68 points on a team like the Sabres is incredibly valuable, and I imagine they believe that he will build on that and have just as good, if not a better outing this season, but you also don't know that. It's pretty risky. Another guy making $7.1 million a season for the next 7 seasons in the NHL. Another guy that, respectfully, Tage Thompson, good player. Jason Robertson is better than him and more valuable to his team. And then you shift your focus to the Central Division. Jordan Kyrou of the St. Louis Blues is 24 years old, again, in that same age range as the 23-year-old Jason Robertson. He also recently signed an 8-year deal worth just over $8 million, AAV also kicking in the 23-24 season. Kyrou had 27 goals, 48 assists, and 75 points in 74 games played in 21-22. I won't outright say that Jason Robertson is better than Jordan Kyrou. I think they're certainly, at the very least, on the same level, but I think Jason Robertson is much more valuable to his team. But still, this is another young forward signing a big deal that Jason Robertson, at the very least, is on the same level as, if not slightly better than Jordan Kyrou. So the point of all of this is, I probably could find some other forwards who are signing some nice deals this offseason that are the same age range as Jason Robertson, but probably not as good as Jason Robertson. But Robo and his camp are looking at these signings, and they think, Jason is better, as good, if not better, than all of these guys. And he provides a ton of value to his team. So why shouldn't he get more money, or at least the same amount of money, if not more money, than those guys? You could even look at a Kirill Kaprizov deal where he's making $9 million a season. I don't know if Jason Robertson can ask for that, even if the Stars did have the cap space, but there's certainly an argument to be made for it. And it's not Jason Robertson's fault. It's these other NHL forwards signing these deals with teams that frankly just have more cap space. And that's one of the reasons why the Dallas Stars are also a little bit to blame here, just because they only have $6.3 million in cap space. And of course, it's not all the Stars' fault, because they do have to sign other players. Like they got Jake Ottinger back this summer. Dennis Gurianov re-signs. Joe Pavelski re-signed halfway through last season. And of course, you also look at those contracts for Seguin and Benn, taking up a quarter of the cap. So the Stars sit right now, according to Cap Friendly, with about $6.3 million in cap space. And so if they want to give Robo the big money, they need to make some sort of move to remove some guys from the current roster where they're not getting paid, whether that's Anton Hudobin. I know I've heard Roddick Fox's name thrown around every now and then. Maybe the Stars work up some sort of deal there or look to move on from him where they're not paying him as much money, or not paying him at all if they can somehow get his contract off the books. That would certainly be a step in the right direction to get Jason Robertson a big deal. I imagine he's wanting something in that 8-year range, making at the very least $8 million a season, if not more. So, and then you even dig deeper within the Stars organization. We know how ownership feels about dishing out this big money to young, talented scorers. So a mixture of that on top of all of these other gifted forwards who aren't as good as Jason Robertson making big money, it's just a recipe for seemingly a holdout. And I imagine this is something that will continue to be held out up until the very start of training camp later this week, or maybe even dipping into training camp. Who knows? I think Jason Robertson is going to try to play this out as long as he can to try to get the best deal that he can possibly get. And the Stars are also going to try to fight and get a deal that is friendly to the team and organization as a whole as well. I still think the likely scenario that we will end up with is some sort of bridge deal where Jason Robertson is maybe making around $5 million a season, and maybe in that 3 to 4 year range. He might not like it that much, but I mean, it's still going to be a significant pay raise from what he made last season. And the Stars, are able to hold on to their young cornerstone forward. he's hopefully still going to produce at a high level. And then at the end of that bridge deal, if he's still playing at an elite level, which I expect he would be, then you definitely would probably have the space to give him that seemingly max contract and make him one of the highest paid forwards in the league. So there's a ton that's going into this. It's not just, Jason Robertson's end that's holding up things. It's not just the Stars end that's holding up things. There's all this other action, all these other moving pieces happening across the league that are giving us this massive pause on the Jason Robertson deal getting done. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will shift our focus to some other young, talented Dallas Stars forwards. We'll talk about Wyatt, Johnston, and Logan Stankoven and their performance in the Traverse City Prospect Tournament right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Athletic Greens and their product, AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Tons of people take some kind of multivitamin, and it's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Your subscription comes with a year's supply of vitamin D, which is so important to add as the fall and winter months start approaching where we might not be getting as much sunlight. It's lifestyle friendly, so whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, this supports better sleep quality and recovery. It supports mental clarity and alertness, and it's the one thing with all the best things. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, let's talk Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven. At the time you're hearing this on Monday, the Traverse City Prospect Tournament has come to an end, but Thursday through the rest of the weekend, the Dallas Stars had a team of prospects up in Traverse City, Michigan, competing in a round-robin style prospect tournament. The St. Louis Blues, Detroit Red Wings, Columbus Blue Jackets, Toronto Maple Leafs, all up there as well. I believe those are all the teams. I could be missing a team or two, but it's a tournament that the Stars have competed in the past. A lot of teams competing in rookie round-robin tournaments, prospect round-robin tournaments this time of year, right before training camp to kind of get their prospects and young players ready for the intensity that will be the NHL training camp season, session, whatever you want to call it, and as well as preseason games to get them kind of in that competitive mindset, as many of these players will be looking to compete for NHL roster spots. And of course, this Stars prospect team, one of the better ones we've seen in recent years, headlined by some fantastic players such as Wyatt Johnston, Logan Stankoven, Maverick Bourque, Christian Kyrou, Matt Murray in goal, just to name a few. Still plenty of other talented forwards, defensemen on this roster as well. And even, I believe the Stars had at least one other goalie on the roster alongside Matt Murray. And again, you guys are hearing this on Monday where they've already completed all 3 of their games. But at the time of recording this on Friday afternoon, the Stars have only played 1 of their 3 games, and it was against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's the other team I was missing whenever I was listing out the teams playing. But the Stars only played 1 game by the time I'm recording this. But if that game was any indication, I feel very secure and safe in saying that Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven had a very nice weekend. And if that's wrong, they at least looked really sharp against the Toronto Maple Leafs prospects on Thursday. And in case you missed it, in case you haven't been on social media, or maybe you just missed the tweets about it, the duo of Johnston and Stankoven connected on an incredibly nice play for a goal, the second goal of the game. Be sure to check it out on Twitter. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on our Twitter page, just at Locked On Stars. Just a beautiful play all around. Wyatt Johnston playing kind of close to that Toronto blue line, wrestles the puck away from a Leafs player, and then is able to kind of wiggle the puck free for Logan Stankoven to pick it up. And then, of course, if you've watched Stankoven play at any form, you know that he has the speed to be deadly on a breakaway. He gets away. He gets a one-on-one opportunity with the goalie. His initial shot is blocked, but then he scores off his own rebound. And it's just so encouraging to see these guys forming this great chemistry on ice against real competition. We've seen them practice with one another. We've seen them participate in some preseason matches with one another. And those are really good to see. But now we're seeing them compete against guys that they're going to be competing with for the next several seasons. Many of these prospects that they'll play, a lot of them will be seeing some time in the NHL in the near future. And so it's good to see, they're going up against real competition. This isn't a practice session, a training camp session where they're going against their own teammates, people within their same organization. That's good for a player's development, but ultimately not as good as a real, competitive game type situation like we saw in Traverse City over the weekend. So it's really, really good we know that these guys already have good chemistry and a good relationship with one another off the ice, and to see that translate on the ice is such a good thing. And I think it's just a small taste of what we are going to be seeing in this preseason, as well as just years to come, as these guys will eventually be some of the household names on this Stars roster. And if I were to guess, again, I haven't seen the other two games yet of recording this, I imagine that they both probably made some fantastic plays throughout the rest of the tournament, and it's just really, really good to see, really great to know that they are still developing this good chemistry as we are approaching a very pivotal Dallas Stars training camp and preseason. And just with that said, I think it, maybe even goes without saying that if you have an opportunity to go see the Stars this preseason in any capacity, I would encourage you to do so, whether you live near Cedar Park and you have a chance to go check out training camp. I know the Stars will be letting fans in. I believe it's free as well. So if you live in the Austin, Cedar Park area, you're a Stars fan and you want to see this team as a whole, I mean, you can see, of course, the big names that are shoo-ins for the NHL roster, as well as some guys that are going to be the future of this team. You can go to that if you live in the Dallas area, which I imagine many of you do. Go to a game at the American Airlines Center this preseason. The tickets are extremely cheap. I remember last year, me and a buddy paid like literally $3 a pop after fees too for a preseason game against the Colorado Avalanche. So tickets are not going to be that expensive. Go to a preseason game at the American Airlines Center. It's a ton of fun. It lets you kind of get your feet wet, dip your feet in before the intensity of a full capacity, full crowd regular season game at the AAC. But you also get to see these young guys, competing to crack a roster spot. Both Johnston and Stankoven have both expressed their intention to not just show up to training camp to, get better and, form chemistry with the team. That's certainly part of it, but they've both expressed their intentions to actually make the NHL roster and then stay there throughout the entire year, not just get sent back to their junior club after a handful of games. So them, as well as many other young promising players like Ty Dellandrea, Riley Tufte, just to name a couple, they're all going to be competing incredibly hard. So it should make for a good product on the ice. So if you have an opportunity to go see them this preseason, whether it's at training camp or a preseason game in Dallas, or if you live in one of the cities they'll be playing in, I think they play in Tulsa, I think they play in Minnesota, I think they go to Colorado as well. If you have a chance to go see them play this preseason, you can do it on a budget. So I encourage you to do so because it's going to be one of the more intriguing Dallas Stars preseasons that we've had in the past several years. All right, let's close out this Monday episode of Locked On Stars talking about an old friend in Rick Bowness, who may not be in Dallas anymore, may be up in Canada and Winnipeg with the Jets. But I saw a news story on Friday while recording this that it just really caught my eye and made me think about a couple things. I'm sure many of you saw it as well. The Winnipeg Jets announced on Friday that they would not have a designated captain during the 2022-2023 NHL season. Rather, they would have a group of assistant captains at the time of recording this. That list of assistant captains has not been released yet, at least from what I've seen, but I imagine it will be some of the veteran players on that team. Scheifele, Wheeler, maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't know how many guys they're going to have be alternate assistant captains, but they will not have a captain. So Blake Wheeler will not be wearing the C on his sweater this season. And it's really no secret that there have been culture issues in Winnipeg as of late. And I think that's part of the reason why the Jets went out and got a coach like Rick Bowness, because this just seems like a classic Rick Bowness type move to try and change the culture that is currently being cultivated in Winnipeg, or that has been cultivated in Winnipeg over the past handful of seasons. And, it just really makes me think that the Jets could have a bumpy season, through 2022, 2023. Probably better for them in the long run to go through that now rather than 2 or 3 years down the road. If they were to just kind of go about business as normal this season and pretend there hasn't been issues in that locker room and in that organization over the past handful of seasons. Probably better to just rip the Band-Aid off now, maybe go through a bumpy, rough stretch this year, and then maybe things look better for them a couple years down the road because they made these decisions now. But not just to focus on the Jets or what they're doing. It just really made me ponder and think about Rick Bowness's time here in Dallas. And, I think it really just kind of makes me think how he deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to do as far as maintaining a good culture throughout his short tenure as head coach here in Dallas, because there was a lot thrown his way and a lot thrown at the players as well that could have very easily shifted their attitudes to maybe, tear down some of the good culture that had somewhat been established, but kind of maintaining while also still building a healthy team first kind of culture in Dallas. I really think that that's something that a lot of people talked about when Bowness departed from the team and eventually signed in Winnipeg. But just looking at the situation now that he's dealing with the Jets, it just makes me really appreciative for the seemingly good culture that was still maintained in Dallas during a pandemic, during a condensed schedule season, during a coaching change as a whole. I'm sure the Jim Montgomery, him being fired midway through a season a handful of years ago was a shock to the locker room. And Rick Bowness steps in. Of course, he'd already been familiar with the team, being an assistant coach, but he's able to step up and continue to lead this team well. And it also just adds a ton of respect to Jamie Benn as a captain. I mean, say what you want about his stats, say what you want about his production. That's a totally different conversation. I think the Dallas Stars are incredibly fortunate to have as solid of a captain as Jamie Benn going into this year. In my opinion, and of course I'm going to sound biased saying this because I host a show covering the Dallas Stars, but Jamie Benn is truly one of, if not the best captain of his respective team in the NHL. Just the way that he, carries himself on and off the ice, standing up for his teammates. Some people may say, oh, Jamie Benn's a dirty player, but a lot of times, if he's fighting someone or hitting people, it's because he's sticking up for a teammate. Don't necessarily think that he does it in a dirty or cheating type way, but he's a guy that's going to let you know how he feels. A lot of times it might not be with his words, it's going to be with his actions. And he doesn't always have a ton to say off the ice, but he always is going to speak highly of his teammates. When they do well, he's going to encourage them. And there's, of course, going to be several things that we never know about or hear behind closed doors in that locker room. But the Dallas Stars of recent have always been a scrappy team that's going to fight every single game. And a huge testament to that has been the leadership of Jamie Benn. So just looking at this Winnipeg situation with Rick Bowness makes me appreciate, one, what he did during his time in Dallas as head coach, maintaining this healthy culture that hopefully will still carry over into this Peter DeBoer era. Of course, DeBoer is going to come in with his own methods of building a good culture, but I still think that there will be things that Bowness did that have a lasting impact on this locker room with plenty of these players that will still be around that are, were there for the Bowness era and now are going to be here for the seemingly entirety of the Peter DeBoer era, however long that lasts. And it also makes me appreciate Jamie Benn, that, Rick Bowness, I'm sure, would have never looked to strip anyone of being a captain or looking to shift the culture coming in as interim head coach. But to just know that we have a guy like Jamie Benn that doesn't really seem to be in danger of losing that captaincy over however long, much longer that he plays for the Dallas Stars. A day is going to come where he is no longer the captain, but while he's still here, I think we need to appreciate, again, just to hit the side of him being a great captain, a great leader of this team. The stats, the goals, the assists, the points or lack thereof, different conversation. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a pure leadership standpoint, because there's so much more to hockey than just the numbers and the stats. It's about who's leading your team and how well they are leading that said team. So say what you want about the Stars organization as a whole, but I think we should just be grateful that even though, sometimes there's bad times in a season where you're losing some games, but in the grand scheme of things, the Stars organization seems to be doing pretty well as far as culture, especially compared to a lot of other NHL clubs, seem to be in a good space. And I think that that's, a good starting point for eventually building a Stanley Cup champion. And they've even, with that, they've still been competitive, making the playoffs this past season, being in the Stanley Cup finals 2 years ago. And there's still a lot to be excited about and a lot to appreciate with this organization. So I feel like I'm kind of rambling at this point at the end of this, but just seeing that headline coming out of Winnipeg and seeing the general reaction from the public there, and even people that follow the Winnipeg Jets closely seem to be pretty bummed about the announcement and seemingly predicting a disastrous season for the Jets this year. And it just makes me grateful that the Stars are not in that position. I wish Rick Bowness all the best. I believe if there's anyone that can turn around a toxic culture in that Jets organization, in that Jets locker room, it is Rick Bowness. So we'll have to see what becomes of that Jets club 2 or 3 years down the road. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for tuning in, for making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Help us get to 1,000 subs by the end of 2022. Find and follow us on social media. You can find me personally on Twitter at Dane_Lewis, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, the show's account, just a simple at Locked On Stars. Thank you guys again for the continued support. Again, tomorrow we will be finishing out our Central Division preview series. We'll be talking with Josh from Locked On St. Louis Blues. Again, if you've enjoyed that series, you're going to want to check that one out. And if you're behind, there's a nice little playlist. If you go to the playlist tab on our YouTube channel, you can find every single Central Division preview episode, from episode 1, where we talk with Jack of Locked On Blackhawks, to hopefully by tomorrow, all 7 Central Division preview episodes will be up. So if you've missed out on those, I encourage you to go check it out to get the rundown on every single Central Division team going into the 2022-2023 season. But I hope you have a fantastic day, Stars fans. Remember, we are also back to 5 uploads a week, so we will be back tomorrow with that crossover with Locked On Blues. Not Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow. So get excited. Hockey season is finally upon us. Preseason getting rolling in just a small handful of days. Have a great Monday, Stars fans. We'll see you back here tomorrow.